Sorry about that. We are going to go ahead and get started. You are here for the Arts Education Town Hall with Dr. Santelises. We have an incredible team that has been working on this town hall for over a month at this point. So I just want to give a shout out to all of the planning members that put time in after school for a lot of the teachers on this call and a lot of other community volunteers to put this wonderful program together. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Julia DeBusolo and I'm the Executive Director of Arts Every Day. As soon as we have our host, I will pass it over to the wonderful Jason Newton. Aha, I see he is just hopped on. Hi, Jason.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I am great. Let me get everything going here. All right, are you able to hear me well there?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me get rid of these. Guessing that we're not live right now, yeah?
We are live.
We are live, how about that?
You can go ahead and get started. Folks in the audience, if you can go ahead and mute your microphones, it'll help with our sound quality. We're gonna go ahead and get started with our wonderful presentation today. Jason, you go ahead and take it away.
Certainly, and thanks everybody for joining us. As you can see, even a guy on TV can get it wrong every now and then. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Jason Newton. If you don't know me, I'm from WBAL TV, but I'm probably more known for being August and Jonas's dad. And being their dad also means that they're doing something that I did, and that's attending Baltimore City Public Schools, and they're learning the beauty of what arts can mean for a school system. I'm a proud alum of Roland Park Elementary at middle school and also Baltimore City College, and the beauty of both of those, I was part of the band in both of them. I can't say I was good, but I was a member of them. At City, I was in both or all three, the marching band, the jazz ensemble, the concert band, as well as a percussionist. My youngest son is a violinist at Roland Park, and my oldest just got into the Baltimore School for the Arts playing the trumpet, which we're all very impressed with. I guess what impresses me about the arts, especially in city schools, is what you learn from it, what you gain. It's a lifelong experience that stays with you forever. Teamwork is part of it, friendship's part of it, discipline is part of it as well, and also the impact that it has on your life. Music stays with you, and I'm sure the same thing with visual arts and all forms of arts as well. I'm in the basement where I make a lot of noise on the saxophone that I'm really bad at playing, but I enjoy it because of much of what I learned as a student and from teachers. One teacher is doing it right now and doing it well for city schools is Derek Hewlett. He's also a product of city schools, and he's teaching now, and he's going to join us to talk a little bit about what the arts have meant for him from the teaching aspect. Mr. Hewlett.
Hi, how are you?
I'm excellent.
Awesome. I can talk to you live, or I did do a pre-recording too, so, but either way is perfectly fine with me.
Hey, you have the floor, however you want to do it.
Okay, I can talk live. Can you see me? Because I have my video on. I thought I did.
Yep, I can see you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I teach music at City Springs Elementary Middle School, and I went to Frederick Douglass High School. I was in the Cab Calloway Music Careers Program. But if we push it all the way back, I went to elementary school in Edgewood Elementary, and I didn't have a music program there, so I didn't have the access to a music education at the time. But my fifth grade teacher recommended me for advanced academic at Roland Park Elementary Middle. So I went to Roland Park for middle school, and I went to middle. study study saxophone in band, and it was amazing. I was in the band, I was in the choir, I was like Mr. Roland Park. It was an amazing experience. I was in the student government, all kinds of stuff. And so then when it was time to go to high school, I decided to go to Douglas, and going to Douglas was like the best thing ever because I had so many opportunities musically at Douglas. And I had an amazing band director, Reverend David Burton was my band director. And there was just so many wonderful things. I mean, we had a concert band, a marching band, a jazz band. There was a saxophone ensemble, cello ensemble. It was just so much. It was so vibrant, and I feel like that kind of saved my life and kept me out of trouble, And I had a rough home life dealing with, things like I had depression because I had so many family members that died early on, and also just the trauma of growing up and being a teenager in Baltimore sometimes. And teenagers get a bad rap, like people don't understand them and the stuff that they do. And but I felt like music was a place for me to express myself. And then my band director and then my choral director, Mrs. Dolores Jones, she's deceased now, but they really helped me to find my way and hewed out a niche for me. And by the 10th grade, I had gone into playing piano. I was interested in playing piano, and I started playing piano. And I had been begging people since I was like 3 or 4 years old about, hey, I want to learn to play piano. I had musicians in my family. Nobody would work with me. So at this point, I teach piano and voice and stuff now privately. And so when young people come to me and say, hey, I want to do this, I don't turn them away, because whether they have the money or not, because I'm like, hey, that was a little Derek Hewlett that somebody just, could have just turned away and discouraged. And so I didn't want to do that. So going to Douglas gave me the tools to go and I was in the choir at Douglas too. That was wonderful. And the music program at Douglas is historic. It goes back probably about 100 years. And at Douglas, we always got amazing ratings. We won national competitions, international things. We always had just amazing ratings and stuff. And I learned a lot. So then when it was time to go to, well, I guess before I get to college, I met a lady named Jill Wards in middle school. And so she's a part of this association, and she's still a tour de force in my life as far as the arts are concerned. Jill introduced me to some big name people at the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. And so I started being able to go and get free tickets to see the symphony all the time. I was like sitting in seats over the stage, and I got to rub elbows with the musicians there and get on their nerves and ask them questions like, hey, well, how did you do this? I studied that piece, and how did you do that? That's hard right there. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And they would recommend teachers for me for different things I was studying, lessons at the Peabody. And then in my senior year of high school, again, Jill making her contacts, they said, well, he's gonna need a piano. What can we do? And they what they did was the governing members, the people who write the big checks at the symphony, they made a donation and raised money in 48 hours to buy me a baby grand piano, which was shipped to my house. They tuned it, they took care of it. It was like amazing. So I've had a surreal experience being this little kid from West Baltimore, from humble beginnings. And then I would say once it was time for college, my band director, Mr. Burton, he was a Towson guy. So he was like, you need to go to Towson. So I went to Towson, and and it was amazing. So my experiences from city schools helped me to be able to be a church music director. This is my 23rd year in that. And I got that from a phone call at Douglas High School when I was 14 years old. And I was able to go to Towson and finish my bachelor's degree. I was able to just serve as the performer and a conductor and arranging music and doing things for people. So this is a wild ride that I've been on, and I love it. And so I feel very blessed that I've been able to pour into students in Baltimore City and share music with them. Thank you.
Mr. Hewlett, thank you. Like you said, I'm sure there are a lot of little Mr. Hewlett's out there because of the work that you've done in your classroom. So thank you for doing that. Let's now turn to the City Schools Fine Arts Coordinator, Mrs. Chanel Howard, to talk a little bit about the overview for Fine Arts Strategic Plan and the data update as well. Welcome.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me all
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I am going to I am going to apologize. We do have a bit of life that's happening in the Howard household right now. That is Aubrey, who is not very happy. 1 second, please.
We can give her a minute and watch the wonderful testimony by Dante Winslow so that she has a minute to tie that up. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
sure. Yeah, let's do that. And for folks who don't know Dante, I've run into him once or twice, and he's a heck of a musician. And if you're familiar with the Super Bowl halftime show that had Suit and Tie by Justin Timberlake, Dante actually helped to arrange and get that band all ready from the University of Minnesota. So here's a little bit from Dante Winslow.
Hello, I'm Dante Winslow. Thank you so much for having me speak on behalf of Baltimore City Public Schools. I'm a graduate of Cross Country Elementary, Falstaff Middle School, Baltimore School for the Arts, and Johns Hopkins University Peabody Conservatory. I was blessed to be introduced to the trumpet in the 5th grade as a 10-year-old, public school system educated, and it has saved my life. Literally, it has been the catharsis for me. It has allowed me to escape so many trappings of inner city living. It was my go-to whenever I felt sad, whenever my parents weren't there for me. It has allowed me access to college, a full scholarship college, to USC and to Johns Hopkins. It has taken me around the world, literally. I've performed with the likes of Justin Timberlake and Queen Latifah, Lady A and Jill Scott. So I'm here to speak on behalf of anyone that is advocating kids to learn an instrument or have access to the resources and the technology to expose them to music and the future that could change their life in terms of being full and whole humans. Music is one of the things that saved my life. The trumpet is definitely one of the things that saved my life. So as a blessing to everyone, please endorse those teachers and those politicians who are going to give and help to save children's lives who need music desperately in their schools and in their classrooms. Love you, Dante Winslow.
Dante Winslow, thank you. Also looks like Miss Howard is back to join us. If you want to put the baby on, put the baby. We want to hear from the baby too.
I feel like she has the most important things to say at this time. Thank you so much. And I also thank everybody for just bearing with all of the things. I have an amazing task, which is just to share some updates about the strategic plan and those that have come before me in terms of their testimony. This is why we're here, is to make the difference for students that were so many of us, right? They share our stories. They are us. And we hope that we'll be building things. So legacy for them to be able to stand on our shoulders and do a little bit better by the next generation. So Without further ado, I will be sharing our Fine Arts Strategic Plan updates. Our district seeks to provide equitable access to arts instruction by school year 23-24. And what we're looking to do is to implement fine arts, that's visual art, music, dance, theater, and media art as core subjects. We're looking to meet and maintain compliance with COMAR, to provide equitable access to arts instruction as taught by certified fine arts teachers. We're looking to provide high quality instruction that meets state and national standards, and to support high quality instruction with adequate funding for materials of instruction, teacher professional development, and curriculum. So let's share a little bit about what that looks like to date. What this slide shows us is the percentage of schools offering each discipline. So you can see that we've grown over the last school year from 87% to 90% of our schools offering visual art. A little bit of a decrease in terms of overall music courses, 72% last year, 70% this year. Dance, we a little bit of a decrease as well. In dance, we went from 8% last year to 7% this year. Theater, a bit of an increase, 12% last year to 19% this year. Instrumental music, we're up by 2%, so 10% last year, 12% this year. And vocal music, we're just about leveled out at 5% each that last year and this year. Next slide, please. And here's our overall plan. Here's what we're looking to expand by 23-24. We're looking to make sure that every student in grades pre-K through 5 will be enrolled in the following courses. So these are courses in visual art, music, dance, theater, and media arts. And we're looking to have dance embedded in other curriculum as it makes sense as well. So like having dance units taught in the PE, physical education, having theater subjects or theater units pushed into our language arts curriculum, which is Wit and Wisdom, and then also have media arts embedded into other fine arts disciplines to provide an organic way for us to offer media arts to our snickerdoodles. In grades K through 8, we're looking to have students be able to specialize in one of these contents. So in pre-K through 5, students get the requisite skills and overall application of fine arts instruction across all of the disciplines. In grades 6 through 8, our intention is to make sure that students have the opportunity to specialize in whichever courses they would like to. So this will be courses in visual art, music, dance, theater, and again, media arts. In 9 through 12, we're looking for students to have the opportunity to be able to have depth of study. And depth of study courses are those ones that go a bit beyond what the recommendation is or to satisfy the state requirement for one fine arts course. And so we're looking for those students to be able to have depth in study in all of the disciplines for fine arts. And this is also in alignment with our goal to be college and career ready. So here's what that looks like right now. Our goal is for every student to be enrolled in the following: visual art classes, music classes, they have dance curriculum infused in PE courses, they have theater courses that are infused in Wit and Wisdom, and then media arts courses organically throughout the other areas of fine arts. And to date, we have 84% of our schools that are serving pre-K through 5 have visual art classes, 68% music classes, 57% both visual and art. So this is towards our music goal. This is toward our overall goal for 100% of our schools in grades pre-K through 5 to offer both visual art and music. And then we have less than 10% of our schools offer dance, theater, or instrumental music. So we still have a bit of work to do. Next slide. And again, these are our grades for our snickerdoodles that we want to have the opportunities to specialize in arts courses. And here's what that data looks like. So schools that serve grades 6 through 8, 78% of them have visual art, 63% of them have music, 65% of schools offer 2 or more fine arts disciplines. Our goal is for 100% of those schools to offer 2 or more fine arts disciplines. And currently, less than 10% of schools offer dance, theater, or instrumental music. So again, we still have some work to do. Our next slide. High school is a little bit of a nut to crack. What we're looking to do is remember to provide depth of study opportunities for our snickerdoodles in grades 9 through 12. And what we're looking is a variety of disciplines offered. So 78% of our schools offer 1 to 2 disciplines. 18% offer 3. Only 6% of schools offer all 4 disciplines. And advanced placement is offered in only 20% of our schools. That depth of study opportunity that we're looking to make sure our snickerdoodles in high school have. We know that 40% of schools offer graduation credit courses only. 46% of schools offer courses beyond graduation requirements in at least 1 discipline, and less than 10% of our schools offer depth of study in all 4 disciplines. So we took a look at the data to also find out what trends we might be able to find in the data. And what we have noticed is that access to advanced placement, depth of study, and variety of offerings are found at the most competitive high schools. So this would be what used to be called the citywide high school. So this would be your city, your poly, Western schools of that nature. And then we also saw that Connections, a community-based art school, is the only choice high school with depth of study in all 4 disciplines. Now, I want to highlight Connections because Connections is pretty unique in that it is not a criteria-based high school. So that means that there is no testing requirement for students to be able to attend Connections, and we're very proud of them. That was the video that you saw at the beginning where Miss Deidre Dawkins was leading that amazing lesson in African drumming and dance. And so we're very proud of them and want to shout out Principal Brooks and the snickerdoodles at Connections. Yes, you can have that. Yes, you can have that. Next slide, please. And the next slide.
I think that's all your slides.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to any questions at the end. Thank you, Julia. Yielding back to you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Howard. Julie, I think you're up now to talk a little bit about budget and policy platform.
All right. Thanks so much. So I am going to share just a few brief recommendations from a really wonderful working group that has been looking at all of the data, seeing where improvements are still needed, and really thinking strategically about both budget and policy to make some recommendations. We always have recommendations, y'all. You can't get away from it. So the first is to really think about the strategic investment of new state and federal funding with a focus on expanding access to instrumental music for all 6th through 8th graders. We are recommending that those certified fine arts teachers be hired at the district level as opposed to the school budget level to make sure that that investment is sustained over time and isn't subject to drops in enrollment. Because there's a big price tag that goes along with the introduction of new instrumental music programs with the purchase of concert band instruments. And of course, scheduling needs to enable small groups and ensembles to really go big on that instruction as well. So from theater and dance, we saw in the slides that Chanel presented that we are still very low in access when it comes to theater and dance. So we're recommending that integration be supported across the curriculum, but then also supported with professional development in both wit and wisdom, the English language arts curriculum for pre-K to 8, and in the physical education curriculum for dance. For grades 6 through 12, we're recommending that those district hired certified fine arts teachers that are certified in theater and dance be hired at the district level and then assigned to specific schools and strategically staffed up at specific schools throughout the city. We've talked a lot about this with Chanel and Chief Davis, and from a standpoint of wanting to increase, of course, district-wide, but then also start within specific schools that already are building kind of that arts-rich learning space. We want to encourage that as well. And then across all grade levels, equitable access to live performances. This is such a great opportunity for students to experience literary works on stage. This is a great opportunity for our arts partners and community partners to really support what's going on during the school day. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there does need to be a district level equipment maintenance and support budget to support upgrades when things wear out and repairs as well. So our next recommendation is around budget guidance. Budget guidance is a big booklet that the district administration puts out during the budgeting process and outlines the expectations for principals to on how they should create their budgets and their staffing, and to some extent scheduling as well. We are really, really thankful to Dr. Santelises and her administration for implementing the improvements to the pre-K through 8 budget guidance in the 1920 school year. We support the continued implementation of that, and we hope that there are fewer waivers extended to schools that are not able to meet that, especially with the new funding from the Blueprint for Maryland Schools that has been coming through. And then we will be in touch with some improved guidance for recommendations for materials of instruction. We're hoping that it's either broken down on a per student basis or that there's at least a set amount per fine arts discipline, as opposed to $2,500 for all fine arts disciplines offered at the school. From the high school level, Chanel talked a little bit about wanting to expand, expand depth of study. This is a really big thing where it's kind of where staffing and scheduling meet. And so Chanel and her team have been doing some great work around improving the course catalog, but we're also suggesting that there would be a good opportunity to move high school towards a student-to-teacher ratio as well, so that there are additional staff members to be able to provide that level of depth of study that really supports college and career readiness. And of course, improved guidance for materials of instruction as well. Number 3 is fine arts policy. We're incredibly grateful for Dr. Santelises' leadership when it comes to fine arts. We hope that the board and the administration will consider a policy to make sure that the efforts to meet COMAR and expand equitable access are sustained, no matter who is in the position of chair of the school board or who is in position of the CEO seat. Not that we want you to go anywhere, Dr. Santelises. We really, really have appreciated your support and collaboration, but we are concerned about whether these efforts can be sustained if there's any type of transition in leadership without a policy. And then we also want to encourage that multi-department coordination for implementation of the plan long-term. This is especially important for instrumental music, with the idea that the district could be purchasing large numbers of instruments, placing teachers at schools across the school district. So just a combined effort that brings together budgeting, facilities and maintenance, and scheduling under the leadership of Chanel and the Fine Arts Department to make sure that all aspects of how a student moves through fine arts, especially in terms of instrumental music, how that should work, and making sure that all of those aspects are considered. Lastly, we do want to look further into the impact of fair student funding on fine arts sustainability over time. You know, fair student funding means that the dollars follow the student, depending on where they go to school. And so fluctuation in enrollment has a unique impact on the loss of fine arts teachers and programs at schools. So we want to look into that further and think about how that could be mitigated, and also think about it from an equity standpoint. You know, a lot of the enrollment loss and a lot of the citywide population loss is happening simultaneously in the same neighborhoods year after year. So what does that mean from an equity standpoint? And then how does that impact the long-term sustainability of programs? So I think that's my last slide. I'll turn it back over to you, Jason.
All right, Julia, thank you. And I think we should make clear that it's not just the adults doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to holding on to the arts in city schools. The youth, they all have a voice as well. And one of the avenues that they've used, the Baltimore Youth Arts Advocacy Council, and they know that youth voice is very important through all this. Right now, another product of Baltimore City Public Schools, Barry Sine Moore, to share a poem.
Hello, my name is Sine, and I will be reading my poem, The Boy Who Never Had Art. The boy whose light was dimmed, his dreams cut off at stem, beloved is his heart that never had space to grow, that never had space to make. All the wondrous galaxies in his mind, while he was an astronaut in his head, he was a miner of gold to find. He had $1 billion in his head, but he didn't buy a big, big house. He bought his community paintbrushes instead. Man, in his head he knew Barack. He sang on Broadway, he popped and locked. In his head he did it all. And in his head it had to stay, because every teacher would eventually say, not here, not now, or not today. The light bulb gave away, the money disappeared, the awards never came, the spaceship had to depart. This was the boy who never had art. Thank you.
Sine, thank you. We've talked a lot about leadership.
Hello, my name.
I thought we had another one coming. We talked a lot tonight about leadership and what that means to holding on to the arts in Baltimore City Public Schools. And right now that falls into the lap of Dr. Sonia Santelises, the CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools. And before we turn it over to her, I think a lot of folks on this call have expressed not only just what you've meant for the arts for them, but also getting us through, speaking as a parent now, through the craziness that's been COVID-19. Whether it is taking care of online learning or making sure that folks got back into classrooms this school year. It is a tough job that I don't think any of us would want. So we applaud you on the work that you've done on that front. And now we turn to now as we look towards making sure that every child gets the opportunity, at least if they want it, to take part in fine arts. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sonia Santelises.
Thanks so much, Jason. It's great to have you here, not just as a member of the larger community, but as a City Schools parent, City Schools alum, and City Schools artist. So that we always love welcoming you back. I want to thank both Chanel and Julia for the work that they continue to lead around arts. Chanel, your overview I think was really helpful in being able to situate kind of where we are with the numbers. And I think there were a couple of times that you said, yes, it's better, but it's not where we want it to be yet. And I would just echo that we are in what I call an acceleration phase. I think the fact that City Schools frankly began the commitment to right set arts education even before I was named as CEO made it so much easier to just kind of come in and continue that work. Expanding Chanel's office, which hopefully we can do again soon, because she has shown a wonderful return on investment in areas like professional development for our arts teachers that previously really was not on the radar, I think, in the very robust way that Chanel's been doing it. I also just want to say here how reassuring it has been and just how strengthening, what a strengthening force, being able to partner with our community arts leaders in the development of this plan has been. I will tell you, I've been in other school districts and the involvement of the larger Baltimore City arts community is a distinctive for us. In other places, you know, it's a nice add-on, and sure, we bring in the arts community after the plan is laid. But I think throughout this, there has been a recognition that as much as we've got to push for acceleration, we don't want to lose sight of the goal, that really the City Schools Baltimore Arts Education kind of initiative and strategic plan, I think is a great example of push and pull, of vision with urgency, yet understanding the context that we're in, a lot of the right setting that we're in. While I too want to see those numbers at 100% for music instruction and visual arts, I will say we were not in the 70% when it was probably 4 years ago. We were not there. We could not say that. That's not enough. But it does show that we're making progress. We're continually looking at how we can do better. And I think the advocacy of the city arts community is one that is healthy and is needed for any school system. And that is, you know, you all help keep us honest, right? You all ask the hard questions. And I think that there were some of we saw this evening when we looked at some of the recommendations around what should be board policy, when we look at recommendations around tough questions like guidance that schools are receiving, and how do we blend the guidance that helps to assure equity with a lot of the autonomy that school leaders still want and enjoy. And it's a tension, but I would say it's the right tension. And if the goals are around student access and those don't change, then the question becomes, how do we get there faster? So I'm proud of the work that we've done so far. We definitely have ways to go. I will tell you that I was one of the biggest advocates for the instrumental music plan. I kept asking for it. And a lot of it goes down to kind of what we heard tonight, that we heard from, you know, students and our former teacher and even Jason himself, right? That it is, you know, I'll never forget that during the pandemic, there was a student, and I won't say her name, but we were on a panel together. And I'll never forget that she said, you know, she said that her, and I think she played she might have also played the trumpet, Jason, just like your son, but she, I believe it was the trumpet. She said that kept her. That was her lifeline during the pandemic. That was her lifeline during virtual school. And so the fact that we are at a place that I think we are using the realizations of the whole child that we've been talking about for a while, but that really came in full relief during the last 20 months. I think has just reinvigorated both myself as well as the board to make sure that we continue to press the gas on the pedal to making sure we have equitable access for all young people to a full arts programming. And then what I will also say, because I know we want to get to some of the questions, which I think are very meaty questions, and I'm sure there are more that will come tonight. I also think it's important to note that when we are talking about investments with regards to the federal dollars that are coming down now, both in ESSER funds as well as the Kerwin Blueprint dollars that both Chanel and Julia referenced earlier. What we're really trying to do, and I've been very direct, I've said it publicly, is use the one-time dollars to bridge to Kerwin dollars and accelerate some of the work. And one of the areas that we have prioritized for that is the arts. It's why I asked for an instrumental music plan, because we want to be able to use one-time dollars strategically for things like instruments. And both Julie and Chanel will be happy to know just yesterday, I received the draft of what the cost would be for that. So yes, it's alive and well, but we want to use those one-time dollars as they referenced for things like building back instruments. But I also want to emphasize that the policies we put in place are also important. And I, maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I've got to tell you, I remember my first 2 months here, almost 10 plus years ago as CAO, when I had to clutch pearls at the time. I think I was wearing pearls and not beads. When someone told me that they had a school, the shall remain nameless, that no longer had an instrumental music teacher and was dumping instruments, right, in a dumpster. And like I said, I clutched my pearls, I got on the phone and I said, somebody get over there and get those instruments. And I think this speaks to something that Julia referenced, and that is the long-term commitment, that it doesn't matter who's sitting in the seat. It shouldn't be dependent, right, on the individual, whether it's Sonia Santelises or whoever will be next, right? It needs to be a commitment that is put in policy, but that also takes into account, we've got to be strategic about our funding. And we have to make sure that we are investing in a way that this isn't going to go away, just when I'm old and sitting in a rocker and decide to do something else. Because one of Jason's sons or something decides, or maybe, who knows, maybe it'll be Sine, right, who wants to come back and be CEO. I think we've got to know that that commitment is so built into the DNA of how we do the work, and acknowledge that we have some challenges and pressures, but it makes us better. And I think that the advocacy, the recommendations continue to make us better. We can't give everybody everything when they want it, but I have really appreciated the partnership and really looking forward to questions. And I can't wait for the day we have a citywide youth orchestra that has or jazz, it could be a jazz orchestra. I don't really care at this point, but that can literally represent all the young people, all of the schools in the city. And that's kind of my dream, that we get to that point where it's not just the same 4 schools that are populating marching bands and orchestras and quartets, or choirs for that matter. It's not like we've got a plethora of choirs either. So that for me is where we are, but I will turn it back over, I think. Am I turning it back over to you, Jason?
Yeah, I'll take it. And I have to go convince my boys to somehow become the CEO of schools, which I'm telling you right now, it ain't happening. Let's talk a little bit. It looks like one of the names has changed, so I'm gonna make sure I get it right, because I have Chantel Fuller down as one of the parents, but I see on the slide here, Khadijah Hart, City Schools parent, will be joining us now. Danelle Boyd, also a 12th grade student from the Reach Partnership. They have some questions that they want to get to you, but before we get to them, the folks here at the town hall, they have about 30 conference registrants who have submitted some questions. Every question is important because the time is limited. So to assure everyone that this is a process and there will be continuing opportunities for all who are concerned to join in and help to plan the development and implementation and engage with some of the decision makers as we go on. So let's get to the questions because I know they're good ones.
All right. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Santelises. My name is Khadija Hart, and I am in Arts Every Day. I'm a parent fellow of Arts Every Day, rather. And I just want to send a shout out to Sheena and the other parent fellow, Wasim Brown, who's on here, and Chantel Fuller, who's not. I am a lover of the arts, all things arts. I'm not from Baltimore originally, but what brought me here was to come to Morgan State University, and I actually was in the marching band. I loved it. I was a flag. And then I also majored in video production because of my love of media arts. It carried over from when I was at a Performing Arts High School in Rochester, New York. I'm excited to be here. My son loves art so much, and I think he gets his love of art from me. I also currently teach at the Bel Air Edison School in Northeast Baltimore through Art with Art. And before we get to questions and answer, I want to turn it over to Donnell Boyd to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about his accomplishments.
Thank you. My name is Donnell Boyd. Yeah, my computer camera is off, but it's fine. I'm a Reach Partnership High School student. I was also a BMI intern, and I'm currently working with the Art Advocacy to promote and talk about art. Because in my school currently right now, my art teacher, Miss Cook, who is the one who introduced me to BMI, she was the one who was talking about funding not really being important to school, and that made me to be feel like for arts it really wasn't important for schools, which really made me like a wide-eyed opener. Seeing that I personally have drawing and I have entered stuff from the 10 by 10 show. And I've also, personally am an editor. I find arts very important to my life, and I really want to promote it.
Okay. Well, again, like Jason mentioned, the following questions that we're going to ask, they have been curated from many submitted questions. And so, Donnell, if you would like to start off with the first question for Dr. Santelises.
Donnell, yeah, you're a video. I mean, you're a,
yeah, I couldn't hear the rest.
Okay.
It was the first question.
Yeah, you can start with the questions.
In your tenure as a CEO, you have made significant strides in improving equitable access to the arts district-wide. What are you most proud of, and what is your long-term vision for the arts in Baltimore City?
Yeah, thank you for the great question, Donnell. So I think one of the things I'm proudest of is some of the expansion that you've seen, that we just saw on the slides. I am proud of the fact that we have a plan that has caused us to shift funding. And I did hear you, Donnell, when you talked about, what is the budget priority, and that we have really worked. We should see increased percentages, increased number of resources going to the arts. So I am very pleased about that. I'm also pleased that we have really pushed on the number of full-time arts teachers, that we call them FTEs. But we have relied on our community partners to take the place of arts during the day, and it actually should be a supplement, right? It actually should be a partnership coming alongside. It should not be that there's not a full-time art teacher in every school in city schools. And so then when someone like Khadija comes in to partner, she has someone who is at the school, based in the school full-time, that she can partner with, right? That they can extend and reach even more young people. So I think I'm most proud of the fact that we have started to right-size expectation for the arts. in the school district. That there was a time when I came in as CAO where frankly, the expectation was that you got arts any way you could. And if you got a little sprinkle here and there, that was enough in some places. And what we have said is it's not enough. And we are redirecting funds and focus in a way that we put substance behind what we've done. And I think I've already shared kind of my vision or dream for that is I want to restore the ability for schools to be incubators of the next generation of art talent coming out of Baltimore City, period. And that art talent is everything from, the next Jada Pinkett Smith, but it could also be the next Jason Newton. Jason doesn't, his day job, as far as I know, now maybe he's doing it at night somewhere, but Jason's day job is in a different field. It's in the field of communications, but part of who he is was developed through the arts. It's art teachers, right? Our future Khadijas and Ms. Morrisons, right? Those folks who have said they want to give back and to nurture that talent. And yes, I do want to be able to go to a citywide music event, citywide visual art events, citywide dance events, citywide theater competitions. That is my vision. If we get to that, then I will know that we have really done right by young people by giving them the opportunity to really develop in the variety of ways that the arts allow them to do.
Thank you for that amazing answer. I will start with the next question. Phase 1 of the Fine Arts Strategic Plan is focused on ensuring that all students are enrolled in at least visual arts and music by the school year 2023 and 2024. And that progress is being made. Phase 2 includes expansion of instrumental music, dance, theater, and career path programs. What is your timeline for phase 2 implementation?
Now that's a great, also a great question, Danelle. What I would say is I don't necessarily have a timeline yet for those other areas of the arts. I think we've done really well partnering on those timelines with our partners. But I will say this to you, Danelle, that I do think that the fact that I'm reviewing already budgets for instrumental music, purchase of instruments, budgeting and upkeep of that, I think that should signal to folks that the unexpected federal dollars that are coming to Baltimore City, we are looking for creative ways to jumpstart that timeline and shorten the time that we'll be able to begin that phase 2. So we're starting with instrumental music. We're going to try to maximize those dollars as much as possible. And I think the good news is that, originally we thought we were going to have to wait for Kerwin to hit for that big of an investment. But the federal dollars are allowing us to jumpstart that in ways we hadn't anticipated. So I think that's the good news.
Thank you. My co-moderator, Ms. Gaja, will ask the next questions.
Thank you, Danelle. So Dr. Santelises, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is the third question. Nearly all 5th through 12th grade students in Maryland have the opportunity to participate in a curricular instrumental music program, except in Baltimore City, where less than 15% of students have that opportunity. Will implementation of the instrumental music plan be a priority in the 2022-23 budget process, especially with the availability of ESSER and Blueprint funds?
Yes, no, and that question is, as you noted, Khadija, connected to my former, the response that I just gave, but I'll just restate briefly that we are looking very seriously at using the one-time ESSER dollars to jumpstart instrumental music access in city schools, particularly at the middle grades level. I was very encouraged to see Julia's walk through of some of the recommendations, because one of the grade level bands we're focusing on is middle grades. We know that we have. I'm sorry, I'm getting my internet is unstable message. So if you can't hear me, just wave at me a little bit. But yes, and we are focusing heavily on middle schools because there really is a dearth in, I'd say, more than a handful of middle schools across the city have the kind of robust instrumental music programming that they should, but also, as the plan noted, not leaving out kindergarten through fifth, but knowing that we've got to start someplace. So yes, and the public should know that if you go to our, we have about 5 or 6 slides where we outline the plan for the use of the ESSER dollars, and you'll see there kind of a starting point of where we have devoted the amount we're projecting to spend of ESSER dollars in supporting and jumpstarting instrumental music and other areas in the arts.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, question number 4. The arts continue to suffer under fair student funding, especially as school-based enrollment fluctuates year to year. When enrollment drops and budgets get tight, the arts are the first to be cut. This makes sequential arts education programs difficult to expand, sustain, and implement equitably. What do you see as a solution? Would you be open to centrally funded, locked, rather fine arts staffing, or a policy to ensure equity and long-term sustainability?
Yeah, this is one of those rubber hits the road questions. It's one of those rub questions that I referenced earlier. And it's that balance between the school level autonomy, right? The fact that principals and school communities are closest to the ground and so want to prioritize. The other piece to this is that, equity means that you're able to guarantee a base level experience for every young person, right? It's one thing to say, do we want to have a jazz band in middle school or an orchestra in middle school or a choir? It's another thing to say you don't have any of those, right? And so part of what we're balancing is those two. I will be very straightforward because I usually am. And that is to say that this, I would say, is linked to the larger question of how small is too small for a school. Because what we are seeing is that schools that hit a particular level of enrollment actually can, with sometimes some small amount of support from central, can actually support robust arts offerings. Where we get into trouble, and I will just add here, not just with sports, but not just with arts, but with sports, with world language offerings, what we begin to see is that when schools are small beyond the ability for us to compensate for, we have to be able to ask what I call the hard question. And that is, I love small schools, but how small is too small? And it's some of what is making this really challenging. Like when I go into a kindergarten through fifth grade school, we now, and I could pick one, but we have a K-5 school right now that is 220 students for kindergarten, pre-K through 5. That is just from funding, whether it's fair student funding or central funding, that is too small a number to support the kind of robust arts programming that you are seeing in the plan. On the other end, you have schools that are K through 8s with 600 students that actually do have middle school orchestra, that actually are offering instrumental music. And then we have schools that are in between, right? We have schools, and what we have been, and I don't think Angela Alvarez is on the phone, who heads up our Office of New Initiatives. But what we have found is that if we can at least get an elementary school to between 350 and 400 students, which means that you don't have to have 800, right? You don't have to be as large as a Commodore John Rogers or a Roland Park. You don't have to be that large. But when we know that when we hit about 350, then we're able to say with confidence, yes, school, you've got to either lock your budget to make sure that this position is there, or we take central dollars and supplement it. But the reality is, whether it's centralized or localized, there's still a finite amount of money, whether you centralize it or you localize it. And so that's the rub. Now, I think in places, and I will tell you, our budget forums that we now hold, we've been doing them for the last 3 or 4 years, are times when principals in their communities develop a budget, but they don't just submit it in the computer anymore. What happens is now you have to sit down with the principal supervisor, a representative from the budget office, a representative from teaching and learning office. And that's when we flag some of the issues like, I think it was last year, Julia, or maybe it was 2 years ago, when we flagged that certain schools were slated, we had about what, 18 to 19, was it, Julia, schools that were going to lose their art teacher based on the budget. Well, in those budget collaboratives, actually, and it was last year, great. So last year, the CFO had already flagged that. We already had people who had flagged it. They just hadn't told me. So when Julia, said it, I was like, are you kidding me? We're not rolling back. But it's in those budget collaboratives that we have that exchange around what can you say no to, what is a choice and what is not. And what increasingly we are signaling to schools is arts is not a choice anymore. Arts is a must-have. The choice comes in like some of the examples I gave before. Do you want to have a choir, right? Or do you want to have a dance troupe? Do you want one or both? But at the same time, we have to be real about what school leaders are facing. And it's not good enough to say, frankly, some of what we were saying when I was CAO, we just told people, oh yeah, you've got to have it, knowing they didn't have the money to do it. And so we've got to have real hard discussions about this how small is too small. And we can't have it all given the funding. You can't have a school with 200 kids and then expect art, visual art, instrumental music, dance, drama, and all of the other things. So that's why it becomes a harder issue, but one we can overcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. And again, this is, you're touching on so much, Dr. Santelises. So please, again, when I asked you this question, there might have been some things that you said in previous answers, but I am going to respect that these came from, they were submitted to us. From college scholarships to showing a unique range of experiences in job and college applications, offering depth of study in the arts at every high school is important, like you just outlined, not just at School for the Arts or Baltimore Design School or Poly or City and Western. So what opportunities do you see in increasing the number of choice schools that offer college and career pathways in the arts?
Yes, no, and this is a really important question. And I will never forget, I think I was in my second month as CEO, and I'll never forget, it was at Patterson High School. And a sophomore at Patterson High School said to me, I love art. Art is why, and he was a visual artist. I love art, and that's why I come to school. He said, but I only have 3 arts classes to choose from. Now, that is not depth of study at the high school level of art, right? I knew that. We don't need any deep analysis to know that 3 arts classes for 4 years of high school does not depth of study make. So one of the things that we really are doing, and I'm beginning to see, I was at a couple of, I've been spending a lot of time in high schools at the beginning of the year. And I will say, actually our AP focus, the expansion of advanced placement throughout high schools in the district, we actually have some principals at non-entrance criteria high schools that really see that as an opportunity. So they are expanding specifically AP art as part of their expansion. So it's not just AP Calculus or AP English, AP Lang. They're actually using the AP focus to build out their arts component. So once they have an AP arts course, that then has to trickle down in the schedule all the way back to freshman year. So that's one tool that I've seen a number of schools use to really lift that. I think the other piece is, does get into scheduling. And we've seen this, that the use of time at the high school level is a bear. It has been since I was in high school. It was when I was teaching, and throughout my career, and yes, I will say I'm 54. So that lets you know how long high school scheduling has been an issue. So we are working with high schools around this idea of what are the other kind of non-academic, for lack of a better term, right? Traditionally understood academic areas that we are offering to young people. And that is giving us an opening where we might not have had it. We did not pay as close attention, quite frankly, to, you know, making sure that there was a full complement at the high school beyond just, you know, take some classes and, you know, let's see how you do. I think the other place where we're seeing expansion is in our career, our CTE expansion, because as I can't remember whether it was you, Khadijah, but, you know, as people noted, arts is a career track as well, right? And so part of what we've been looking for is how, as part of our CTE, our career expansion, not everybody, you know, young people are clear, not everybody wants to go straight to 4 years of study at University of Maryland, right? Some students want to get a job, go to school at the same time, do other things. And so one of the places where we're really also looking to expand and have funding to expand is through the career technical education component, right? And really building out, even for students that aren't going immediately to college, studies within high school that are aligned to a career track that can then allow them to access that way. So those are some of the ways that we're building it out, but we definitely know that depth of study, which is why I'm sure Chanel included it. And a lot of that was, you know, came because folks like the folks in this meeting raised the issue. But I've never forgotten that Patterson sophomore who said that to me. And I thought, my God, if I, you know, and I have a daughter, one of my twins, one of my youngest, lives and breathes to draw and paint. And if you were to tell her she only had 3 art courses coming in high school, she'd probably drop out in 7th grade. So I think that's what we've got to continue to acknowledge, that for a lot of our young people, it's why they come to school.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator, Danelle, for the next 2 questions.
Question number 5. Wait, is it no 5? No, number 6. Okay. Even with expanded budget guidance for schools serving pre-K through 8th grade, vendors are still supplanting certified fine arts teachers. How can guidance be strengthened?
No, it's a great question, Danelle. So I think one way is in those budget collaboratives that I referenced earlier, where we're actually, instead of, you know, schools just having to submit a budget electronically and nobody really sees it, really having group conversations around each individual school budget is one way that we can do that. And then repeat the second part of the question for me, Danelle, so that I remember I had something in my head.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you
The
repeat
second
it
part
for
of
me?
the question was, vendors are still supplanting certified fine arts teachers. How can guidance be strengthened?
Yes, thank you, Danelle. Very helpful. So the other piece I would say around the vendors supplanting is we've also got to be honest again about what I said earlier about the budget constraints. The majority of principals are not just relying on vendors because they don't want a full-time arts teacher. For a lot of principals, they're figuring out how to give young people access to arts with limited resources. It's part of why the blueprint and advocacy for Kirwan was so important, right? So all that advocacy we did, a matter of fact, when we checked on our fair student funding model, one of the things that some national school finance people told us was fair student funding works, but it doesn't work when your overall budget is low, right? Like you can't make up for not having a certain amount of money, period. So part of what we are looking to do now is to, by jumpstarting this work, it means that that portion of new Kirwan dollars will be devoted to schools, and it'll be a lot easier to hold schools accountable for those. But in some cases, not every school, not every principal is, going to a vendor because they don't want to hire a full-time teacher. They're going to a vendor because when they do the math, right, we're forcing them to make choices they should not have to make. They should not have to make a choice between a physical education teacher and a music teacher. That is not something that, you know, in a robust school district that is serving all students well, but, you know, that we should have to do, but a lot of our school leaders do. And so that's why I go back to how small is too small? What does the overall budget look like? And then, yes, what the guidance and the policy says is also important, but I can't do that in a vacuum. I can't just kind of wave a wand and command people do things without giving them the resources to do them.
Thank you for that fantastic answer. Question number 7 is talking about budgeting also. Budget guidance requires principals to budget $2,500 for the fine arts. Can this guidance be expanded to be based on enrollment and numbers of the arts disciplines?
Yeah, and I think that we're moving towards that. I think it's a sound recommendation, and I think we should definitely add it to some of our discussions about how we move forward. I do want to point out that per student funding at this time for arts will just exacerbate the challenges that smaller schools are already facing. So if you do it based on student funding, you know, per student, and you're still sitting in that K-5 I described that has just about 200 students, you're still going to get hit with not having enough. So it's, you know, absolutely, we'll consider it, we'll factor that in. And again, just want to be realistic and point out that if you're a school with a low enrollment, it's not, you're still going to be in the same situation.
Thank you. That was really helpful. The last question will be answered by Ms. Keja. Yeah, the last question will be answered by her. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the last question, Dr. Centelisa. Thank you so much for just being here with us and just answering all of our questions. You're amazing. So what do the performing arts look like in the era of COVID? Will schools resume field trips to theaters, museums, etc. this school year?
Well, I was thrilled. This question thrills me because I actually want our young people out and being able to take advantage of just all of that our arts community has to offer. And I think it is part of, you know, not to be overly dramatic in terms of performing arts, but I've got to tell you, I think it's a healing process. I mean, and so part of what we had, I think, the responsibility to do, and I appreciated Jason referencing kind of just a little thing called the pandemic that got in the way of some of the work over the last 2 years. But part of why we worked really hard to show that we could resume school safely, even in the midst of health challenges, was exactly this reason. Because the more that we can show we can do things safely, the more willing families are to participate in those kinds of experiences. And I will tell you, Khadija, we have schools that have already resumed field trips. So even at the beginning of the year, we've had schools that have been very creative about the kinds of field trips, how they go. We have purchased PPE, as a matter of fact, and I think Chanel referenced this at a board meeting. I have to give Commissioner McFadden credit for this. He was very concerned in the return to school that in the same way we were protecting our athletes, he wanted to make sure we were also attending to protecting some of our performing artists. And so we have, with Chanel and the team, purchased appropriate PPE, for example, for some of our singers to practice, for some of our wind instruments to practice, those kinds of things that help keep young people safe. But I will just tell you, everybody who's on this call can go out and say the CEO said young people should be back experiencing the arts of the city. We weren't in the city, but I will tell you, we took a short family trip to New York. We were to go see Wicked, actually. So we weren't in Baltimore, forgive me for that, but we went to go see Wicked. And I will just tell you, I thought we were doing it for my 3 girls. And my husband and I looked at each other at the end of the performance and we said, oh my God, it's so good to be back. Like seeing live performances again. And that's what I mean by there's a healing aspect of getting our young people connected to the larger community through the arts. So you can all say that the CEO said it. Let's get back safely. to getting our young people connected with our arts community and arts venues. So absolutely for it.
Thank you.
Well, we're approaching the end of our meeting here tonight, and I want to thank everybody. And to tag on to what the CEO was saying, I was at the Hippodrome. In fact, we did a story with them and the Voxel Theater, a small black box theater, and also with 8x10. They're ready for you to come back. So once they get all their schedules going and have all that thing, I mean, you know how to do it. Look online on their websites, and you'll see when their next openings are for tickets. They are ready for you to return. With that said, when it comes to our schools, the key here is just to be involved, to do things that we're doing right now, and to have a voice. Continue to look for venues and ways for our kids to all be involved in the arts at their schools, whether it's with the school budget or with the school family council. Those are just some of the outlets that you can have as far as working with your schools to ensure that things happen, so you don't have those dumpsters with instruments in them. I'm the son of a retired Baltimore City math teacher and a retired early childhood educator as well. And they will both tell you, just as important as geometry and algebra were to them, or reading to the young kids on the kindergarten and pre-K level, they will tell you that the fine arts were just as important, and not only their development, but the kids that they taught when they were here. The number of schools I went through, it would take me hours to list all of them. But just as important are those classes were for their students, what they were teaching. Same goes for the fine arts as well. So I want to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you to the CEO for making time for us. I'll see you at the grocery store again. That's where we typically meet up when it's not work related. I want to thank you all for just being engaging and to continue this conversation outside of this meeting into your neighborhoods as well. So have a safe and healthy evening, and we'll see you soon.
If you want to learn more about getting involved in budgets, we will be doing a collage, an artistic collage and budgeting discussion on November 30th. So learn all about how to get involved in your school's budgeting process there. Thank you all. Have a good night. Thank you, Dr. Santelises.
Thank you all, and thanks to Jason and all of Khadijah and Sheena and just everybody. I think Danelle is still here. Everybody who was here facilitating and who came. Thanks so much. And Chanel. Love to Chanel.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, team, for showing up.